What is going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. This is the channel where we sit down and cover different comic book stories from Marvel, DC, and even IDW as well. We are going to continue our coverage over Brian Michael Bendis' Daredevil run. And we are going to pick up with Volume 4, and this is the story where we learn that there is a new Kingpin in the city. Someone is trying to replace Wilson Fisk. When we last saw Wilson Fisk, he was blind and was on life support. And so now the big question is, who is the new Kingpin of the city? And so if you like today's comic book video, please leave me a like down below and also subscribe to the channel for more content to come in the near future. But I do hope you enjoy today's video. So getting into Daredevil again, we have Brian Michael Bendis give us a new character that we are going to see in the next few stories. Her name is Milia Donovan, and she is out with her friend Lori. And Lori is not really an important character, but Milia is going to play a big role in future stories. Now, Milia is also blind like Matt Murdock, but she has no enhanced abilities, except when she is walking away from her friend Lori and crossing the street. Of course, there is a truck that is coming down the street about to hit her, and she can't see it coming because, again, she is blind. Except, of course, you do have Daredevil come in and save her at the very last second. And we knew that Brian Michael Bendis would not bring her into this story to kill her off this early. They do crash land into a nearby store, but this begins the process of Milia having a crush on Daredevil. She can hear his voice and feel his face. Something about his voice and the way his face felt, she felt like there could be something between them already. And so you have Daredevil take care of her wounds from the fall and leaves her there to think about him more. Now we pick up with Matt Murdock at his law office, where he is greeted by Stiltman, who was a villain of Daredevil in his early days. Honestly, a D-list villain. But he came here to tell Matt that the villains are scared of him now. Because remember, the whole world knows that Daredevil is Matt Murdock, but to his villains, they think it's some kind of game to him. Daredevil is known as the man without fear, but Stiltman tells Matt something very important. That Vanessa Fisk sold different pieces of the Kingpin's territory away to different street level villains because the dude is in a coma right now and can't do anything, except she did not give a piece of the Kingpin's territory to the Owl, a mutant character who is also a Daredevil villain who has the ability to fly, super strength, and enhanced senses. His body is kind of altered to give an owl look in a way, but he has always been a little bit crazier in the head than other villains. And so when he did not get a piece of the Kingpin's territory, he attacked other people who had bought pieces of the Kingpin's territory and took it from them, and now he is taking the role as the new Kingpin, and then Stiltman is kicked out of Matt Murdock's office. And so of course this leads into Matt putting on his Daredevil outfit to figure out if it is true about the Owl being the new Kingpin and going around attacking people who could have connections to the Owl. Where of course they don't give Daredevil anything, but they do go and run and tell the Owl that, hey, Daredevil is looking for you. Like, you should be scared. Now word does get back to the Owl, and he is freaking out about the fact that Daredevil is around again and ruining his plans of being the new Kingpin. We also learn that some of the Kingpin's advisors now work for the Owl, and they are trying to tell him he needs to stay calm because the Owl is thinking about going over to Matt Murdock's office and killing him, but the advisors tell him how that is a bad idea. Except again, the Owl is crazy in the head and kills one of the advisors for not stop talking about how bad it is to go after Matt Murdock. But the story does shift over to Milia Donovan, where we see her on a rooftop thinking about Daredevil, how those few seconds with him have built a crush on him. where her friend Lori comes by and tells her that she should go see him at his law office, where Lori tells Milia about who Matt Murdock is and how the world knows that he is Daredevil. But at the same time, he is trying to make it seem like he is not Daredevil. And Lori encourages Milia to go over and see him. But now we pick up with the random thug who is working for the Owl. But we find out that the Owl is trying to push the MGH drug back into the streets again. MGH means mutant growth hormone, and if you take this drug, well, it gives you powers. Now the powers are random, but you do get powers. In a world full of people with powers, there are going to be people who do anything to have powers. And so the Owl is hoping this new drug will be enough to help make enough money to run his operations. Except once again you have Daredevil appear, and once again you have Daredevil interfering with the Owl's operation. And you have him flip the car over, pull out the two people who were thinking about buying the drug, and also the thug who was selling the drug. And Daredevil tells the thug to run back to his boss and tell him that Daredevil is coming after him. Picking up later that night, you have the Owl, his advisor, and some of his henchmen waiting in their base because they place scouts and cameras to tell them when Daredevil is coming. They knew sooner or later he would finally pop up in their base, and so you had the advisor remind the Owl to let him do the talking since the Owl is a little bit crazy in the head. Now, when Daredevil gets there, of course, he begins the process of throwing everyone around and telling the Owl how this is over. He will not be the new Kingpin of the city. And then you have Daredevil realize that they are calling him Matt Murdock, and he senses that they are recording the whole interaction, hoping to use this in court to lock up Matt Murdock. In the past, supervillains could never press charges on Daredevil because they did not know he was Matt Murdock, but now they do. And being a vigilante is illegal, and with him being here attacking the Owl, they can use this in court. Except Daredevil destroys the tapes and tells them that he's not Matt Murdock. They are mistaken who he truly is and leaves before the cops arrive, also hoping to show the Owl that if he does not stop, he will come back again. Now, the next day, two big things happen. The first being that we pick up with Matt Murdock, and he is with Jessica Jones, who pretends to be his bodyguard. Except when they are about to leave, that is when Matt finds out that he has a visitor, and it is Milia. She is making her move and hoping her move will work, and she does get a date with Matt Murdock. Now we pick up with Yuri Rosendale, who is the CEO of the Daily Globe, the paper that told the world about Matt Murdock being Daredevil. And so you have him in his pool having a calm day and trying to not think about the big lawsuit since he's not backing down on the fact that what he reported is true. Except while he is in his pool, we see someone waits for him at the end of the pool. Then by the next page, we see that someone has cut off his head. The question is now, who just killed Yuri Rosendale, and why would they do this? This leads into the police arriving the next day and of course trying to figure out what happened here, where you have Yuri Rosendale lawyer tell them how he was here hours ago discussing the Matt Murdock case. And just like that, the police think that this could be related to Daredevil, that Matt Murdock did this or someone who may have connections to Matt Murdock, and so you have them leave the scene of the crime to pay a visit to Matt Murdock. Now getting back over to Matt Murdock, we see him right now talking to Milia, and just like her, he's freaking out. By using his enhanced senses, he is getting a read on her while she's going over why she had to come over here to see him. That basically after he saved her from being hit by that truck, she had a crush on him. Now, he tells her that he cannot be responsible for what happens to her since the world knows that he is Daredevil, even though he is trying to fix that. and she offers dinner, and he tells her that he has to think about it, but he does like her. But then you have Foggy talking to Matt in the basement about how Matt should not try to do anything with Milia at all. They have too much going on with the lawsuit, plus the fact that other villains could come after her and Matt as well. And so to Foggy, Matt needs to lay low. Then you have Matt tell Foggy about what the Owl is doing right now, with pushing the MGH drug onto the streets again, and that is why he cannot lay low at the moment. He needs to get this drug off the streets. Now, when Jessica Jones walks into the room, Matt asks for where Luke Cage lives, because apparently after the White Tiger case in our last video, Luke has been avoiding Matt Murdock. And you have Daredevil go visit Luke Cage, where we learn that Luke Cage does not like Matt Murdock because Matt is now a liar to him. Instead of embracing the fact the world knows that he is Daredevil and being a symbol for people to look up to, Matt rather tried to get his secret identity back into the bottle, because it is hard for him to be both Daredevil and Matt Murdock. And to Luke Cage, Matt Murdock should just stop lying, because being a liar is one of the worst things you can be. And you have Matt Murdock counteract that argument with the fact that Matt's father wanted him to be a lawyer. He died trying to make sure that Matt could reach that goal in life. And Matt goes on to say that he did not beg for a chance in life to get trounced in chemicals to make him blind to get enhanced senses. And with his identity being out there now, his private life is ruined, and the fact that he could lose the ability to be a lawyer, all of his past cases could get reviewed and thrown out, meaning that a lot of people could be back on the streets who were bad. And to close this chapter, two things happen. We see Matt does take up the offer from Milia for dinner, and so this could begin the process of them dating. But also we see that when Foggy and Jessica Jones are about to leave, they are greeted by the police who want to talk to Matt about the death of Yuri Rosendale. And so we pick up with Milia and Matt Murdock at the end of their date as they are walking back over to Matt's home, until they are greeted by the police who are working on the Yuri Rosendale case. And they are assuming that Matt had a hand in the death of Yuri Rosendale. And Matt is freaking out because he has Milia here. And this is the worst way to end a date. Have your date think that you are some kind of killer. Now, they begin to question Matt on where he was around the death of Yuri Rosendale and who is the person he is with right now. And the list goes on with the questions. And Matt is doing his best job of trying to wrap this up without them arresting him for the death of Yuri Rosendale. And also trying to paint himself as an honest man to Milia, because he still has feelings for her. But at the end, they do take Matt Murdock away in handcuffs and take Milia in a separate police car to question her separately. Now they leave Matt in an interrogation room, and you have Matt use his enhanced senses to listen in on what the police is thinking about him in the case. And the whole time Matt is thinking about how he is hating the fact his world is falling apart, but the police don't know what to do really. They are highly debating on letting him go or just going ahead and book him as the person who was behind the death of Yuri Rosendale. And so you have the two detectives walk in and they begin to question Matt Murdock. And Matt does an amazing job of playing it cool. Keeps playing that he's just a blind man working as a lawyer. There is no way he would be behind the death of Yuri Rosendale. And this is where we learn that these officers are from New Jersey, because Yuri Rosendale's home and where he died was in New Jersey. And the police in Hell's Kitchen are just working alongside with them. And the reason why this is important is because after a while, the Hell Kitchen police officers let Matt go, because the New Jersey police had no power to interrogate a blind man like that. And so Matt leaves the police station and goes home. And this leads to the story switching over to the Owl again. And you have one of the Kingpin's old advisor hand the Owl today's newspaper, where it shows that Matt Murdock has been arrested. And we learn that maybe the Owl had a hand in the death of Yuri Rosendale. Now, the paper does not say that Matt Murdock was released from the police. And so the Owl thinks that he has won, and he tells his men they can move forward with the plan. Now, the story does a complete switch up on us, where we jump over to Sam Silk, the guy who thought he could get rid of the Kingpin and take over the Kingpin spot. Also was the one who ran to the police when the plan failed, and told the police that Matt Murdock was Daredevil, hoping he would get some kind of protection from Vanessa Fisk, the wife of the Kingpin, who was killing people who betrayed her husband. Of course, it did not work, but we see him in prison when a guard told him he has a visitor. And when he goes into the room, it is the Kingpin, letting us know that the Kingpin is back in the picture again. But then the story shifts over to Matt trying to call Milia after getting back home from the police station, only to have her not answering his calls. And so he assumes that she's ignoring him now because he has been painted as a murderer. And this leads to him talking to Foggy about how he is tired of being in this cycle of life where he thinks things are getting better only to be shut down again. After talking to Foggy, he knows it has to be the Owl who killed Yuri Rosendale to get back at him, and hoping to get rid of him as well. Now, getting back over to the Owl, he thinks he has won against Daredevil, and so he's going on with his business as usual, except that is when we see the FBI has arrived to arrest the Owl. The person leading this force is Agent Driver, and we're going to see him in a lot of future books, but this man is leading this force, and he tells the Owl that he messed up because the Owl is too messy with his operations, that it will be easy to lock up the Owl. He is not like the Kingpin, who knew what he was doing and was able to keep the FBI from arresting him. He even tells him that, hey, Sam Silk is dead now too, hinting that the Kingpin could be back in the picture. This leads to the Owl attacking Agent Driver, thinking that he is going to be able to escape from the FBI. Like when things get tough for him, his only plan is to run away. But the problem is Daredevil is there waiting for him. And so of course this begins a battle between the two, where you have Daredevil beat down on the Owl to let him know that he was warned earlier. If he continued to pretend to be the new Kingpin of the city, Daredevil was going to come back for him. And here he is back and beating down on the Owl and knocking him out for the FBI. And to end this story, you have Daredevil and Agent Driver come to an agreement that Daredevil was never here, that the Owl was taken down by the FBI, and that is it. And so you have Daredevil leave, and this leads to Agent Driver talking to his team about should he have told Daredevil that the Kingpin is back in town once again. And this is where we are going to end today's video. And so guys, please leave me a like down below, and also subscribe to the channel for more content to come in the near future. Also, any suggestions on books I should read? Well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But guys, I'm out of here, and I will see you on the next comic book video. Later, guys.